V, man, them true jeans stay falling. Big bang, take left bang. Big bang, take left bang. Big bang, take left bang. Them sharks all in your fish tank. Big bang, take left bang.
Hey, it's Ken Lewis. Welcome back to Audio School Online. So this tutorial is going to be mixing trap beats and creating trap effects. Using a really cool song called Big Bank from a friend of mine named Jydon Harrison who runs CG3 Audio. So CG3 Audio makes like trap sample packs for sounds and stuff. I use them on my beats all the time. And so he's been generous enough to let me use this session for this song. Thank you. And check out CG3 Audio. If you Google him, you'll find him immediately, or you can go to producerloops.com and find a ton of his sample packs as well. So anyway, so this is going to be a full song mix, start to finish, beat, vocals, sounds, everything. But I'm also going to focus in on teaching you how to create a lot of specific different trap effects that I hear on tons of different records. You know, kind of panning snares and slowdowns and filters and different like kind of delay taps and you know what kind of reverbs that you use on trap songs. And you know, obviously not every trap song is mixed the same, and a lot of things are subjective, but I'm going to show you a lot of really cool tricks, and you can take those and expand on them and, you know, make them your own and create your own unique trap effects to yourself and create your own sound with it. But I'll give you a good starting point. So when this session came in, there was a lot of effects on it. So I went back and I had him resend me a few tracks. If you see some of these muted tracks, basically this is the dry version of this. So all right, so here's the snare roll, and then here's the already panning snare roll. So I'm gonna show you how, like, if you can hear this snare roll. So you hear how it's kind of going left and right. Let me mute the rough mix. So I'm going to show you a lot of those trap effects. But the first thing I'm going to do, even before I begin mixing the entire song, is what the heck is happening here? Aha! Hang on. There we go. Got to get my original. Gotta get my original kick drum back. I'm also going to show you how to replace the kick drum, because I think I got a better one. But first I'm going to beef up this 808. Before I start the mix though, I just want to give a quick shout out. So in about 2 weeks, on March 7th, 2015, depending on when you buy this tutorial, I'm launching a new website called Music School Online. It's going to have short form tutorials teaching guitar, bass, drums, voice, and piano, as well as music theory. And if you've got young kids at home and you want to introduce them to music, I've got an MSO Kids section as well. So it's a fantastic site. We're launching with over 400 tutorials already done, so it's nothing like this site. I put out a few tutorials every now and then on this. Music School Online, that it's going to be a monster of a site. So if you've ever wanted to learn an instrument or learn theory, that's going to be the one. Okay, next on to this. The first thing I'm going to show you is this 808. The first thing I notice about the 808 is that it's really thin. 808s are the exact opposite. Usually they're really subby and they have no tone to them. And this one is like the complete opposite. So let's just listen to it and then I'll give you a few pointers with it. I mean, it's got some sub to it, but for the most part, it's a real mid-rangey 808. And that's one of the toughest things to get with 808s sometimes, and I show you in my Mixing Trap Beats lesson, is how to take a subby 808 and put that kind of mid-rangey tone in it. So if you need to learn how to do the opposite, check out that tutorial. This one, he's already got this kind of mid-range tone that is that lets it sit in small speakers like laptop speakers or earbuds and cut through really nicely, but on a big system like a club, there's just not enough sub in it yet. So the first thing I'm going to do is try 2 different ways to put some sub into it. The first is going to be with just a real wide Pultec any Pultec will do. I tend to use the UAD EQP1A Pultec. And whereas normally I would use the low end on a Pultec around 60 or 100, this one, you know, I'm using it just to kind of beef up the real, just subtones of the 808. And even though this is dialed into 30 hertz, and 30 hertz is virtually outside the range of hearing, it's, you know, it's like this really wide bell. So it's really 30 hertz to probably, I don't know, 120, 200, something like that. But it just takes kind of the low end of that 808 and shapes it really nicely. Just listen. So if you got a subwoofer, you can really feel that 808 moving some air right now. And I might even add some 3K. It's not going to do much, but maybe it'll help just reinforce the tone of it a little bit. Not much, but a little. So that's a nice one. Now I'm going to bypass that and go to my old standby, which is Waves Max Bass, which some of you may have seen me use on 50 Cent's vocals. I use Max Bass for a lot of stuff like this. You know, the other one you could use is Big Bottom, or UAD Voice of God is a really good one too. I think Max Bass tends to be a little bit more broadband when I need it to be. So my favorite preset on Max Bass is this thing called Dies Bassum. And man, well, just listen, you'll hear it. Okay, so I'm going to stick with the Max Bass. I'm going to get rid of the Pultec. The second thing I want to do to the 808 is I want it to stick around longer. So this 808 kind of hits and dies. It, you know, it has a sustaining trail to it, but I really want to craft this 808 so it sits underneath my mix and just, you know, rumbles and holds down the sub frequencies really well. I don't want it like a, you know, like a subtone where it's just always a flat line sub going on. I want to have some motion to it, but check out and see what I'm doing. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is really slow down the release. Now, let me show you the opposite. What I was talking with you about, how do you make 808s buzzy? This is how you make 808s buzzy. So you put the release as fast as possible. You need a fast attack, fast release limiter. Compressors usually don't do this. Limiters do this really well. And the Wave stuff does it great. So if you really needed that mid-range tone to come out, that's where you're gonna get it. And this is, you know, this even has a little bit of motion in the thing. The limiter releases before the next big hits, so it still has kind of an ebb and flow to it. And you can hear that buzz go away as soon as the sound goes under the threshold and the limiter lets go, the buzz goes right away immediately. So you kind of, if you want that technique, you got to set your threshold and let it grab for as long as you need it to, and you know, when it releases, it'll get rid of that tone. So, but I don't want it to do that because it's already got that element in it, and I want to, you know, when you use a limiter like this on an 808, you tend to lose low end. And since I just added low end, I'm not trying to get rid of it again. So what I want to do is slow down the release. So the attack is still lightning fast. The attack is like, you know, 0, super fast. Now if I slow it down to like 100, listen to how much smoother it is. Okay, hopefully that was really obvious to you. So you can see now it's sustaining a lot longer and it's still letting go. I want to find that sweet spot to where I feel, and I may adjust it after all of the music is in and I feel how I really want that 808 moving the song. But for now, I want to basically keep it sustaining much longer. And then, let me show you one other fascinating trick. Come on. Okay. So you see, as soon as it leaves that threshold, it kind of lets go and dies off and then hits again. And I'm not trying to get this to be a really powerful punch. We'll use the kick drum to give it that punch through and to kind of localize the sound. This, I just want to sit underneath the track, give the tone for the mid-range of like the bass line, so it cuts through on like laptop speakers and earbuds. But then I mostly just want it to sit underneath the entire mix and just rumble. Okay, so here's the other crazy thing. Well, let me just A-B that before I get to the crazy stuff. Okay, those two settings, the bypass and the engaged, are the exact same peak volume. They're a very different RMS volume. RMS is like an average volume. It's kind of how you perceive the volume to be is more like what RMS is. But peak volume is actually physically as loud as the sound ever gets. But with the limiter, it just keeps it at that peak volume for a much longer time. So it sounds like it's much louder because you're getting that amount of volume for a much longer period of time. It's one thing that compressors will do for you is they'll help a sound sustain. So this is what it's doing. It's giving you a much longer peak value time at the loudest it's going to get, and then it releases. And but the peaks are hitting at the exact same volume when I'm in bypass, but it just releases the sound so much faster naturally that you don't really perceive it as loud. So now that I've totally blown your mind that these have the exact same peak sound, listen again. If you see, the output ceiling is not changing between bypass and in. So anyway, that's enough 808s. And let me get on to the kick drum. So this kick drum, I know I'm going to want to replace it. And there's a lot of drum replacer programs out there. I think the Steven Slate Trigger is a great one. I'll use that sometimes. There's Drumagog. There's a whole bunch of different ones that do drum replacement and drum triggering live. I still use the archaic, probably 20-year-old plug-in sound replacer for especially stuff like this. You can see that this kick has no dynamics to it at all. Every single kick hits the exact same volume. So there's really no guesswork in replacing it. The first thing I've done is I've created a destination track. So this is a mono kick track. I've created a mono destination track and just labeled it KL kick. And then I'm going to highlight this and go under Audio Suite. Every DAW probably has something to do this with. With Pro Tools, its sound replacer is built in. So, sound replacer. I'm gonna hit update. That'll bring the sound in. I don't need it to align to peaks. And this just shows more of the sound that I'm looking at. And then this slider right here, you can see these yellow lines. That's telling me that it's found and identified and selected that sound, and it says, okay, I'm ready to replace that sound. Whenever you see a yellow line, that's what it's going to replace. So I need to put this in mono mode, and I need to select a destination track. So my destination track is basically, after it processes this, where it's going to put it. If I put my destination track over kick, it would replace this track and get rid of it completely. I don't want to do that. I want it to go on this track. So now I'm going to pick my kick drum, and I've got this headlines kick fired up. So this is a Boy Wonder sound. So if you don't know who Boy Wonder is, you need to do your homework, because Boy Wonder is probably the absolute king of trap music as a producer. and he does a lot of Drake stuff and everybody else, Eminem, Not Afraid, and man, just a ton of stuff. And I'm signed to Boy Wonder as a producer. Me and my production partner Brent Colatalo are the production team Catalyst. We're signed to Wonder, so we do a lot of co-production with him. So I get to see him work, and the dude is amazing. So also, Wonder has these sound sets. So if you need great trap sounds, CG3 audio for absolute certain, and also Boy Wonder gives away his sound kits for free, well, his older ones. So if you join Boy Wonder's newsletter, I know their sound kit 1 and 2 are already available. And basically what he does is all of his old drum sounds that he's used from like the past year or 2 or 3 on songs, he'll bundle all of those together and give them away for free to anybody who wants them. And I've got both collections. I use those all the time too. All this stuff is fantastic. So anyway, I've used this Headlines kick, and let me see what it sounds like. I did something wrong. Let me start again. Okay. Oh, I know what I did. No. All right, here we go. Boom. So I got the Headlines kick down here. First, let me play you this kick and show you why I'm replacing it. I like it. It's a decent kick, but I feel like I wanted something kind of with more power. See, that's like really clicky and it's really subby, but it doesn't have much in the kind of like the lower mids. Now listen to the Headlines kick from Wonder that I replaced it with. I feel like that's kind of just a meatier one. It's still going to cut through and give me that punch that I'm looking for. So, when people ask me all the time, well, how do you get 808s to hit and cut through the mix, especially on small speakers? You want to feel that point, and on big speakers, you just want them to sound like thunder. And so it's really a combination of these two things. So I'm going to take away the original kick. So now I have my new kick, the Headlines kick, and the 808. And the first thing I'm going to do, just in case, is check phase. So this, if you don't know what phase is, anytime you see one of those circles with the slash through it, that's a phase icon. And basically, if you're, I'm not going to get into phase, but if your sound is slightly out of phase, then and you flip it, your low end will come back a little bit. So let's see if the low end is better or worse with it in phase or flipped. Wow, what a huge difference. Hopefully you can hear that. I can hear it like night and day. So I'm not doing any EQ to the kick drum. All I did was I flipped the phase. I inverted the phase on it. And basically what that does is it just, sometimes if kick drums are fighting each other, what's happening is those big, huge waveforms that are the low frequency waveforms are so easy to, if you have two different sounds with similar waveforms and similar frequencies, sometimes they fight each other. And if you try flipping the phase on one, sometimes all of a sudden all of your low end, just the solidity of it just comes back. There's also a Sound Radix plugin called Auto Align that sometimes is really great for this kind of stuff. Sometimes it works fantastic. Sometimes it gives you really quirky results, but I actually use it a lot, so I definitely like it. So, all right, so listen to how much difference just flipping the phase is on this. Feel how much like that, more that's like hitting your chest and really jumping out of the speakers. So I'm going to leave the phase flipped on that. My 808 and my kick are nice and solid right now. Now I'm going to very quickly kind of bring up everything else in the mix, and then I'll back up and I'll show you a bunch of different things. So I'm just going to mix for a while. So you kind of notice that the ride and the open hat are really fighting each other. They're like right in the same frequency range. Once you put the open hat in, it just swallows up the ride. So I'll show you how to adjust that. So let me give you a little mixing philosophy. I tend to, at the beginning of a mix, I tend to mix very quickly. And my goal is to get as many sounds into the mix kind of as fast as I can. Sometimes I'll stop and I'll do a bit of EQ, or add an effect or some compression or something here and there. But for the most part, I'm actually trying to shape most of the song. Maybe I'll leave the vocals out. I know what these vocals sound like, so I know kind of how to leave a sonic hole for them to fit in. But I'm going to try and just kind of get everything in. And then as I listen to how everything works together, then I'm going to start fine-tuning things. And I think this is really important because like I've run mixing contests before, and I thought the #1 biggest problem that most young mixers had in that contest, and most young mixers have just in general, is you're trying to do too much. And what you're not doing is building a foundation for your mix first. One of the most important mixing things that you can do is pour your foundation of concrete so that your mix is rock solid, and then start doing all of the effects and equalization. And what you find is, a lot of times, less is more. And it's kind of like Dr. Luke said one time, sometimes the most difficult thing to do is the most simple thing to do. Sometimes you just leave a sound alone. You are not supposed to EQ every sound. You're not supposed to compress every sound. You're supposed to listen to how all of the sounds interact and work together, and then start asking yourself, okay, how do these 2 sounds, or how do these 10 sounds, or how do these 50 sounds work together, and what do I need to do to make them work even better? And I brought up the 808 and the kick first because those are kind of going to pin the whole low end of the entire mix. So I want to make sure that I get those happening first. There's no other real super low end elements of this mix. Those are it. So now I can kind of get those put basically in place and then start building the rest of my sounds on top of that. But I'm not going to do a lot of work on them until everything is starting to sound like a beat, like a song, like it's coming together. So let me continue putting the song together. know, a lot of times when I'm trying to balance things, I'll kind of do the same thing with background vocals as well. I'll put a sound where I think I want it to sit, and if it's a blended sound, say, you know, I don't want it like prominent and out in front, I want it to work with a lot of different other sounds, I'll kind of listen to it and mute it, and maybe adjust the volume, and then unmute it, and then adjust the volume and unmute it, and try it at different levels and see where that kind of that magic blend is. And everybody's going to make different choices, and you know, with mixing, it's all about kind of going with your gut, seeing what makes the most sense to your ear, seeing, you know, what your brain is telling you, like, ah, that's the perfect balance right there. That's what mixing is. It really is that simple. It's not like, you know, don't overcomplicate this. So So I can kind of tell that all of these sounds are like all kind of married together. They all do the similar things. All right, let me figure out what's not in my mix yet. I know this choir element is a big deal. All right, so let me put it. Now you hear this, the kick punching through. Now that more stuff is in and you can kind of hear the solidity of the low end and you can hear that kick punching through, watch what happens to the cohesiveness of the mix when I mute the kick drum. Not the 808, I'm going to leave the 808 rocking in there, but just when I drop the kick out, like the whole mix just disintegrates. Alright, so what else are we still missing in this? This Vox ARP is in there. Should have. And with a mix with this many layers going on all at the same time, you kind of got to make determinations of what are going to be your feature sounds, what's going to be a little bit more out front, what's going to be kind of what gives it the bigness and body and kind of, you know, the pad elements that fill in all of the sonic gaps and give it this this kind of, you know, weight and depth to it. And then you got to figure out you know, what the kind of the reduced elements that aren't really going to be that noticeable. You know, if you really analyzed it, you might hear them, but otherwise they're kind of tucked far back. Not everything can be featured. Not everything is supposed to be featured. And if you notice what I've been doing, I've been kind of selecting certain sections where I know a lot of things are. And this is pretty typical of trap. You'll see like this section will do one thing, and then this section takes over, and then this section takes over, then this section takes over, and you kind of have this back and forth thing that goes on. So if you're a little bit new to trap, really pay attention to the way that he arranged this, because it's a lot of trap producers do this, and it works really well. So my music is basically in. Now I'm going to start treating just some of the basics of the music, maybe adding some compression, some basic sculpting. All right, so I know I want to put a little compression on that so it hangs out a little bit longer, helps your ear identify it in a, in a really thick mix. If it's staying just like that 808, if it's sticking around a hair longer than your ear, when you're listening to an entire mix, your ear kind of naturally can focus on it because it's 100 milliseconds, 400 milliseconds, a half a second longer in the mix at that same volume than it was without the compressor, and then your ear goes like, oh, that's a horn. Oh, cool, okay. And so I'm using a Neve 33609 from UAD. This is like my favorite you don't hear it compressor. If I want compression happening, but I don't want to hear it like kind of pumping and adding color to a sound and really making itself known, then this is the smoothest compressor on the market. It's really fantastic. And my sounds typically are 100 millisecond release. I don't usually touch the gain. Ratios 2:1 or 3:1, and I just set the threshold until it's hitting maybe 2 to 4, maybe 6 dB of reduction. Not, it's a real simple, I don't spend a whole lot of time compressing things. The other word of I don't know, caution or whatever you want to call it with compression is, especially on a sound like this that has effects already married to the sound, that it's also going to make the sound last longer, but in effect what it's doing is it's knocking down that initial transient and lengthening the volume of the sound, so the whole sound is going to last longer. So all of those reverb trails that aren't being compressed because the sound has exited the threshold at that time, all of those reverb trails are going to come up a little bit. So that horn is just going to stick in the mix longer, those reverb trails are going to be there, and sometimes you want your effects. Here, let me show you what I mean. Now I'm going to over compress, so I'm going to really knock down the horn, but you'll hear the effects part of it like way louder. So I don't know if you can really notice that. It's a little bit difficult to tell, but if you listen to the end of the reverb at the volume that it is, the end of the reverb is exactly the same when my threshold is at -4 or -12, because at that point on both sounds, the compressor is not doing any work. It's already released and let it go and said goodbye, but it knocks down the initial sound a whole lot more. But that's how you kind of bring up reverb trails on things. And that's also like if you compress a vocal that's been recorded in a really ambient room, it's going to bring up all of the ambience that you don't want to hear. And that's why when you record vocals, you want to record them in a super dead room. If you don't have a vocal booth, hang blankets or put foam on the walls, carpet, hang a tapestry above you, whatever you can to get that room like really dead and focused. All right, back to the mix. I'm going to try a similar L1 trick that I did with the 808, and it may work great on this, it may not. I want to add a touch of like distortion and grit to make this choir pop out, and I want it to stay at the exact same volume every time I hear it, because it doesn't really have much, the effect is built in on it, but it cuts off with it. Here with that really fast release, it gives it this little bit of like fuzziness and slight distortion to it, which in solo doesn't sound as good, but that little bit of fuzziness and distortion a lot of times will help, for whatever reason your ear picks up on it, and it just really helps localize it in a mix. All right, now for some interesting stuff. So this Vox ARP thing, I like it, but it's not a wild sound. I'm going to see if I can make it a bit more interesting. Alright, so the BrainWorks BX Digital, this is the UAD version. I've got the regular version as well, so there's like multiple versions of this. But I like using the UAD because it doesn't tax my processing. But this knob on it right here called stereo width. So what it does, a lot of pitch spreaders will take the entire sound and just grab it and start pulling it apart, and very often in not pleasant ways. But what I use this BX Digital for, only when I'm doing this type of special effect, when I want to take the sides and I really want to throw them out of phase and see how just big I can get this sound. The stereo width, what it does is it turns up the sides, but it does not affect the middle at all. So you still have this coherency of the middle of the sound, and the sides get a little bit out of phase, but this is only one element in a ton of different layers. So I actually don't mind that out of phaseness. It's going to help me move elements of the mix to sit sonically outside of the speaker so that your brain perceives this to be coming out of speakers that are much wider apart. And check it out. I'll show you what I'm talking about. You kind of hear how wide that is now? And again, if you listen to just the center channel, the volume of the center has not changed at all. And let's see if there's a more interesting area of this sound. Okay, no, this is what it does. Okay, so let me see what Vox 2 is doing. I'm going to try the same effect on this and see what I get. Oh, I like this better. I'm going to bypass that and just use it on this. So you can hear the la 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 la. You like my impression? La 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 la. So listen to when it hits on the sides, how wide this thing gets when it's really jacked up. And usually, if I'm just using things using BX Digital to gently widen things, I won't go past. So 100% is null. It's not doing anything. I won't go past 110 or 112 usually is a lot. And I'll use this on like a whole mix to widen it just a hair, and usually I'll never go past 112. But I'm all the way up to 200. So basically it's doubling the level of the sides. It's throwing things out of phase, which makes them wider than the speakers are. You got to be really careful that you don't do too much of that, but this is a really cool effect. Okay, so the other really cool thing I like to do with these BX Digitals is, all right, so if you don't know what mid-side EQ is, that's what the BX Digital does best. Unfortunately, it defaults to this. So this affects only the center channel. So the left EQ section here only affects what is dead center. This affects everything off of dead center, from just off the dead center to all the way out hard left and right. So sometimes what I will do in a mix is, you know, if I want to, I won't do this to a whole mix, I'll do it to like an individual sound or two that I just want to pop way out of the speakers. So I've already kind of got those lows and all the side channel information popping way out, but I'm going to take just one frequency band and I'm going to jack one frequency band in this way up and let just that one frequency pop out even further. And this is the kind of thing where you don't even necessarily need to hear it as its own thing, but what it's doing to the mix is like this. It's just making everything, it's making your entire mix sound a little bit bigger overall without even adding much sonic character to the mix, because these out of phase elements are just way out there. So typically the way I use phase, like a lot of guys will just put it like a stereo spreader on their entire mix bus and just widen it, and that just ruins your mix so quickly if you do too much of it. But if you do this kind of stuff on just a one or two, three at most individual channels where you take one element and you really put it out, then it can really help you kind of make this much bigger mix without losing your phase coherency of your entire song. Okay, so I'm not going to get the vocals yet. I'm still going to work on the beat. Now I'm going to show you some interesting panning effects. The first thing I'm going to do is, well, let me show you a stereoizer. So this ride cymbal, let me find the ride cymbal in the mix. Come on, where is it? Rides, boom, okay. It's a ride, does what it does. Put it next to the open hi-hat and the open hat kind of swallows it up. So I want to spread out the ride in stereo, so watch how I do it. I'm going to take a delay line. Any DAW has something that you can do this with. So if you kind of just mark down what my settings are and try it with your own DAW, it'll work. So this is a mono sound, so I'm going to go mono to stereo. I'm going to put a stereo delay, which is just the digi-rack. And then I've already got a preset that I love. All right. So if you'll notice, the left side, the mix is 0. So I'm literally doing nothing to the left side, and I'm delaying the right side by 17 milliseconds. But I'm also putting this kind of modulator on it, so it's not really 17 milliseconds. It'll dip down, so I have 40% depth and a rate of just under 1 hertz per second. So it's gonna kind of go from like 16 milliseconds up to 19 milliseconds back to 16 milliseconds. And what that does is when you, and I'm only affecting the right side, so if this one is stagnant and this one keeps shifting, it just gives this really, really nice gentle chorusing to it, but it really makes it wide. Check it out. Mono, stereo. And again, don't look at this delay time. It doesn't matter because I'm not using any. We could just do this to this side and nothing's going to happen. But if I did affect this side, you can hear instantly how it's going to change. See, if you get your delay time too wide, you'll hear a definitive slap repeat. And I'm only at, what, 30, 38 milliseconds, something like that. Okay, so that's it for the ride. Now this open hat. So I want this open hat to pan left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Now I could chop it and, and pan, chop 1, 2, 1, 2 and put all the left chops left and all the right chops right and it would do the same thing, but I'm lazy and I like plugins that do it much faster for me. So Sound Toys makes Pan Man, one of my favorite pan. And the cool thing about Pan Man is if you put the LFO to rhythm shape and you put the MIDI to lock to tempo. So the tempo of my song is 143 BPM, which is really double time. It's really half that. So it's like, God, don't make me do math, 71.5. So it's, and then my width, I want all the way left and right, and my direction, I want both back and forth, so you can see it going back and forth now. I need to slow this down. Okay, there, half note. So a half note at 143 is like a quarter note at 71.5. It's the exact same thing. So you can see this, now the panner is going left, right, left, right, left, right, left. Now listen to what it's going to do to this open hat. Pretty cool. But do you hear those little clicks and pops that are happening at the very beginning of the sound? Listen again for it. They don't even happen every time, but sometimes they do. So most of the time these panners, and there's a whole bunch of them that do this, but this is my favorite. There's this setting called groove. So if you pull it left, it basically tells your panner to go slightly ahead of the beat. And if we're panning very slightly ahead of the beat, then it's going to already start, it's going to have done its pan before it hits that sound. So basically why it's getting those clicks and pops is because, it's panning exactly at the moment that that sound is starting. And every now and then the sound starts just a hair faster and it pops. But if we move our groove slightly ahead, then it'll, the panner will start just a millisecond or two before the sound itself. And if I take this and move the groove behind to a more of a swing groove, you can hear it, you'll hear what it does. It starts chopping into the actual panner. So this is just a half note, left, right, synced pan. It's locked to tempo with, and I'm just moving the groove a little bit forward so that it doesn't clip the sound, and that's it. Really basic. Now let's listen to this in the song. Now, even though I made the ride stereo, these both now have their same space because the ride is stereo, but it's not, you're not perceiving it as this super hard left and right sound. It's still kind of like here. Whereas the open hat now is here, then here, then here. It's never here. So the ride and open hat are now off of each other. They've found their own space. The other thing I noticed about the ride is I want it to hang out a little bit longer. So I'm going to compress it. I'm going to compress the ride just a little bit. Maybe Let's just use a stock. All right. Super fast attack, so I get the very leading edge of it. And I'm getting a bit of reduction. I don't want too much reduction. I just want it to last a little bit longer. Really fast release, so basically all I'm doing is knocking down that transient. It's not like you need the transient of this particular ride cymbal to drive your mix. It's not really adding anything. The body of this sound is what's adding something. There are other sounds where you absolutely do not want to lose the transient. This is not one of them. So if you can see, my attack is at 10 microseconds. My release is really fast at 35 milliseconds. So it's basically taking that initial transient and flattening it out, which brings the transient. So if there's this big spike and then here's the body of the sound, basically this big spike I'm getting rid of. So now the whole sound is at this volume instead of this volume down to here. And then you can kind of put the ride where you want in the mix and it'll just hang there better. All right, hi-hat. First thing, I'm gonna make this a bit brighter. So Waves has an API 560, UAD has an API 560. I think the UAD is modeled better, but this is a bit more convenient. And the thing that I don't love about the UAD is it boosts the volume of the sound a little bit, which I guess the original hardware unit did a little bit, so UAD modeled it like that, which makes their model virtually perfect, but when I instantiate this, I don't want it to change, so here we go. This is so simple. All I'm doing is the 16K band and brightening it up a little bit. Usually I would not do this in solo. I would do it listening to the mix so I know how much to add or subtract, but I just want to let you hear what it's doing with just taking this super high frequency band and kind of opening up the tip top of it. All right, so I'm going to put one more panning effect on the hi-hat that I use all the time, which is this Waves Mondo mod. And I'm going to do mono to stereo on the Mondo mod. Now there's this setting on Mondo mod called full rotor. So you can see it kind of going around and around. Listen to what it does. I'm going to slow it down so you can kind of perceive it better. It's like this real, almost like it has this 3D quality to the panner. And so I'll use this. The thing I like about it is it mostly kind of, it's not like just a straight left-right panner. It gives it this kind of motion and movement and depth to it. So I'm just going to try and find that sweet spot of panning speed so it does a little bit of motion but doesn't kind of make you nauseous. And don't forget, you know, if this is the sound that you like, but it's just a little bit too wide, you can always pull in the pan pots. But I kind of like it wide like this because when it hits those super fast rolls, then it kind of does like this kind of thing. And I've also, the way I've EQ'd this hat is to be really, really thin, whereas all of them are kind of pretty bright. The open hat is bright too, but it's always on the left or the right. And these hi-hats are really kind of tucked, they're still stereo, but they're tucked in a little bit on the stereo field. And they only take up that high frequency, so they keep pointing out of that high frequency while the open hat gives it kind of the high to mid body, and then that ride just fills in the upper frequencies as well. It's a really nice spread of sound. All right, on to the snare and clap. This is a pretty good sounding 808 snare. I'm going to try, we'll go to the UAD API 560. You know, when I'm not really sure what to do and I just want to search and see what different frequencies are affecting things in different ways, I'll usually grab like a 10-band graphic because it'll give me enough different band choices that, that I can kind of play with it until something pops out. And, you know, usually I don't ever put on an EQ or a compressor until I really know what I want to do with it and what I'm looking for, but sometimes I don't and I just want to search. So, one thing that may be counterintuitive with 808 snares, and you have to be careful with it, is sometimes bringing out the lower mids really makes those things pop really nicely. But it can also take away kind of the cut in the high end, so you got to be really careful. Okay, so basic rule of thumb. Kind of like the lower mids tend to make a sound either muddy or sound bigger. So you got to be careful with it. But like in this case, I'm jacking up the lower mids. I'm pushing 250 and a little bit of 500, and it's making the entire snare drum just sound bigger. The high frequencies tend to make a sound more crisp and clear and clean, but sometimes they're too thin. So this snare I felt like was a little bit too thin. I needed to fatten it up a little bit. 250, 500. Let's see what 125 does as well. Doesn't need compression. It's already a compressed sound. You know, most sounds coming out of certainly drum sounds coming out of a box nowadays probably already have compression on them. So unless you want to shape something with a compressor in a certain way, I don't think they necessarily need it. But sometimes you do want to shape it with a compressor in a certain way. But I'm going to shape these sounds differently. So I have this clap. Nothing special. It's a little bit thin too, but I don't really need this for the body of the sound. But it's now these two together. The clap is basically virtually right on top of the snare. And I feel like I'm still just only listening to the snare even when the clap is in. So I'm going to show you a little trick. Add a mono, so this is a mono clap sound. And I'm going to add a mono delay line. Short delay 2. It's just a stock delay. And I'm going to make the mix all the way to 100%, so I'm only delayed signal and no source signal. I'm going to get rid of this depth and rate, and no feedback is nothing. Now, if I brought the delay to 0, it would be like this doesn't exist. But listen, when I start moving the delay to longer, I'll move it to maybe 15, 20, 25 milliseconds, and watch how much more noticeable you can hear the clap. All of a sudden, the clap becomes its own sound, as opposed to just some sound that's layered in with the Hear how you virtually lose the clap without this delay line? But with it, all it's doing is moving the transient of the clap off of the transient of the snare, so that each of them hit at, if they were hitting here, now they're hitting like here. And they're just off of each other, and it lets your ear find both sounds on their own. Listen to it again. So this is with, and then when I bypass it, they'll be exactly together again. I swear, the only thing I'm doing is delaying it by 20 milliseconds, 21 actually. You could do the exact same thing if you selected the entire clap track and then kind of zoomed way in and then just gently nudged it back a few ticks until it was off of the snare. It would do the exact same thing. A delay line is just a little bit faster, and it lets you play with the timing in real time much more easily. So let's hear it again. So you can hear if it goes too long, it starts sounding like a slap. You might want that, maybe not. I don't. So I'm going to go back to maybe around 21. Kind of pretty good. And then I'll show you another quick trick with just spreading this clap out left and right. I'm going to use this Waves doubler, mono to stereo. So the basic setting on the Waves doubler is pretty darn good, except I'm going to move these two delay times a little closer together. Let's try that. Okay, so now I'm going to get into showing you some of these other kind of trap sounds. What the heck is going on? There we go. So first one is this snare roll. So listen to how what this is doing. It's panning left and right like crazy. Easy enough. So this is the mono version of that same sound without the panning. So let me show you how to turn the mono version into the stereo version. I'm going to make these nice and large so you can see what the heck I am doing. And all I'm going to do is duplicate this track, exact copy of it below. I could have done this with the open hi-hats, but with snare rolls, it's not like I have to do it for the whole track. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go through and I'm going to just cut each of them. I'll show you what I'm doing in a second. Okay. And then, so now I've got two duplicate things, and now all I'm going to do is get rid of every other one. Voila, that's it. Well, one more step. So now these are in mono. So I'm probably not going to pan them all the way out. Let's try like 70 and 70. Let's see what that sounds like. Simple stuff. So if you see what I did, I just basically took my cut tool and I cut every single snare to its, I duplicated it, cut every snare, and then got rid of every other one, and then panned the top one left and the bottom one right, put them at the same volume with the same effects, and that's what they do. So easy way to create panning effects. And you know, if you don't own like the Sound Toys Pan Man or something else that'll do panning, this might really save you. Boom. All right. Now I'm gonna, well, let me do that for this one as well. Okay. Now I'm gonna group these so that what I do to one, now that I've got my panning in place, you know, what I do to one, I want to do to the other. See how it selects them both now, even though I'm only going to be on one. And then I want to go on grid, and I'm going to set my grid to 1 bar, or on a bar line. So if you'll see now, I can't select in between a bar line. It'll always snap to a bar line. So I'm going to copy and paste this. I'm going to make these 2 medium. There we go. I'm going to copy and paste this. And actually, let me just consolidate it so you can now see it. So now you can see how it's off of each other like that? So now I'm going to copy and paste this, and then just wherever I see these, I'm going to paste. I don't need those there. Paste. I don't need those there. Paste. I don't need those there. Paste. Those look like they need to be moved back up. Ooh, hey now. There we go. And paste. Those look good. And paste. And I don't need those there. So now I've got my mono snare laid in, and now I can just get rid of this snare roll. Stereo, anytime I hear it. So if you got that mono, you know, 808 snare fill that just like what this is doing, and you want it bouncing around like that, I'm sure you've heard it on a ton of records. That's one way to do it. On to this blast sound. So I got no plugins on it. That reverb is married to the sound. It's already printed that way. So what I did was I got, let me make these bigger. All right. So here's the affected sound. Just keeping things consistent. So here's the affected sound. And here's the dry sound. So I want to turn the dry sound into the wet sound. Real easy. I'm not going to dial it in perfectly because these things are, you know, so subjective. Maybe I'll go with just a straight Lexicon Hall. And I'm going to set my wet-dry balance on the Hall to 50%. Now I'm using this on an insert. So if I was using it on an aux, then my wet-dry balance would be the fader send into the aux. But since I'm using this as a reverb insert, I'm going to set it so it's half sound, half dry sound, half reverb. That's what the mix means. Okay, so my reverb is too long. It's a little dark. I'm going to go for a medium Hall and see what that sounds like. That's much better. Now you notice my sound is a little bit thin. So one thing you can do is turn up the bass on the thing. But it still doesn't have that weight. So I'm going to show you my other favorite bass plugin, this Aphex Big Bottom. All right, so I'm going to set this to nil first. All right, so this is no effect. So listen to it. So I'm going to keep this at 100 hertz. Listen to it as I just dial up the drive a little bit. And this plugin is really touchy. Like, you know, the drive goes from 0 to 100, but really, like, adding 10 points on this is a lot. So you can already start feeling that weight coming out. That's pretty much all it is. Now, here's the sound with all of the effects bypass, just so you can remember how dry it is. First goes the Lex Hall, 50-50, just a medium Hall. I really didn't tailor anything else except for the bass return and put that up just a little bit. And it didn't really give me what I wanted, so I added this big bottom. And there's your blast effect. So if you got like a, you know, you can turn any kind of a sound like that, a snare, into a blast effect or whatever. So now I'm going to mute this blast, and I'm just going to copy this other function in Pro Tools, Apple D. Just, we'll take that and it'll just copy it. See, I just took my 1-bar nudge and nudged it over because my D, you know, Apple D got off pattern. So I'm just going to keep doing that, get it all the way down to the end of the song, and then delete the extras. Now you can see the dry is hitting every single time the wet is. Now I can mute the wet, and my dry blast is now my wet blast. Alright, next up on the sounds are right, twinkles. So here is this twinkled wet and twinkled dry. Let me just balance them out. Same exact sound, one has effect, one doesn't. So I want to turn this dry one into the wet one. So there's going to be a few things at play. I need a like a ping pong delay. So let's analyze this. What's going on with the wet sound? Where is it? Here you go. So you can hear it has this like feedback ping pong delay going left to right to left to right, but it also has this kind of really transparent floaty reverb that sounds like a plate to me. plate reverbs tend to be more coherent. You tend to hear them longer. They have a very straight decay, whereas halls tend to kind of listen, and then they die a little bit quicker. Plates tend to be a bit more like crisp and solid, and they carry the sound with them more, and halls tend to be a bit more ambiguous and floaty. So this sounds like a plate reverb to me. So the first thing I'm going to do is dial in a ping pong reverb, and I'll do that right on the channel. So if I insert, let's just go simple, H delay, and take the analog off because I don't know why on earth they would do that. Now I'm going to hit ping pong, and let's just see what it sounds like. Oh, and you want to adjust the dry wet just like the blast sound so that it's about 50-50. Maybe I'll make it more. So this is 45-55. So the dry sound is just a little bit louder than the first repeat will be. All right, it's too slow. So I'm going to try and speed it up just by ear. That's close, but I think it's a little too fast. $250 sounds about right. So let's hear it. It's not going to have the reverb, but let's just hear. So that's the affected already, and then you'll hear the dry one right after. So it sounds like there was originally like a 250 millisecond ping pong delay. There's no high frequency cut. Listen to what happens if I high frequency cut my sound. So basically, it doesn't affect the dry signal at all. It only darkens the repeats. So if you don't know what the filters are on delay lines, they don't affect the dry sound. They affect what the repeat does. And you can hear, so if I dial this back to like 1K, it'll be really dark. Nothing above 1K will get through on the delay. Okay, so this, I want all that really crisp brightness to. And I feel like it doesn't last as long as the other one, so I'm going to dial up the feedback a bit longer. So the feedback is just how many times it repeats. So if my feedback is greater, then it will repeat longer and it will trail slower and last. Okay, last thing, I'm going to add a reverb to it. And this time I'm going to use an aux send. So I'm going to use bus 1 and 2. And I already have set up on bus 1 and 2 this UAD EMT 140, and it's a preset called AC Nylon Ambience. It's supposed to be for nylon string acoustic guitars, but I think it's one of the best settings on here. I use it for a lot of different things. Rarely are they guitars. And so check it out. I'm just going to add a little bit of reverb to it. Let me make sure that yep, okay, so I'm on the right sound. You hear that reverb starting to kind of fill in the gaps in the sound? And my reverb return on the aux is set to 100% wet. So the aux is picking up the dry sound and sending it to the bus. The bus is feeding it into this reverb, and the reverb is sending 100% of the wet signal and none of the dry signal out. And then you blend those two sounds together and you have this. So that's pretty much exactly how to get that type of a kind of, this is called twinkle. And then I've got the twinkle already copied down the whole track. I just need to put it where this one is already. Boom. All right, so I can get rid of my wet track and just use this. It's already been affected. That's done and done. Now, next thing, clock. All right, here's the clock wet. There's a lot going on that. All right, here's the dry clock sound. And here's the wet. So the one thing I noticed, it's got this kind of a slap going into it that my dry sound doesn't have. So I'm going to put another delay line on it. I'm going to put one of those spreading delays, the exact same one that I used on the ride cymbal. And it's a short delay too. And I'm going to use the same setting. So this is exactly what I did to the ride. But that's not what I want. So what I need to do is maybe put this. Because see, I still want this the dry sound in the center, and I want to put this kind of like left-right slap on it. And I want it maybe, you know, I don't think this is going to be the right tool for this sound. I think maybe there. Yeah, let's try this one. Okay, so I'm going to set both of them to 50%, so I'm hearing half dry, half delay. And I'm going to jack up my delay times to, let's try 120 and see what we get. Okay, initially you'd think like, Ken, that sounds like shit. But let's pull back the mix so it's 75% dry, 25% wet. It's closer, but now that thing that I just showed you with the, you know, the high frequency roll off on the delay, listen to what it does on this sound. So I'm going to roll off the high frequency to about 1K on each side. Hear how much more subtle those repeats are? Like you barely even notice them now. Whereas before, when they were open, it was like a full, you know, it was taking that full sound and from 20K to 20 hertz, it was reproducing it. Now it's only reproducing the kind of lower end of it to the mid-range. And it's only a little bit of a slap, and I'm going to offset this maybe by 5 milliseconds so my delay is actually even a little wider. Then I'm going to add the same delay that I added on, or sorry, add the same reverb that I added on the Twinkle and see what this sounds like. Nope, the wet is like a much, so I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to try another lexicon. Maybe the large ball will work this time. Now I'll bring my mix back to 50% again. I only keep the mix at 50% if I want it to sound really, really soaked in reverb. Otherwise, it should be a much lower number on the mix if you're using it as an insert. Most reverbs I use as a aux sends. It's not a mirror image. It's not exactly perfect, but man, that's really, really close. And I don't want to labor over it because I got a lot more to show you. Okay, organ. Jot onto this really cool thing with the organ where the first hit is open, the second hit is filtered, open, then filtered. Listen. This is so easy to do. So again, I just copied the organ track identical onto another track, and then I copied it, cut it. Now this is the full range, and this is the filtered. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of, on my copied track, I'm going to get rid of the filtereds on my copied and the full ranges on my source, because I don't want to hear those. I want to match this full range to this filtered. Now let's just listen to them side by side so you can still hear how radically different they are. I'm going to level match them. It's the exact same sound. Boom, okay. Okay, so how do I make this sound like this? In this case, super, super simple. The organ filter, I'm just going to put, I can even use a stock plugin for this. The EQ, let's go 7-band. First thing I'm going to start with is a pretty steep filter, because really it just sounds like the low end is gone to me, which usually tells me something like, so here's the filter section. I'm going to engage the low cut or high pass, so it's letting all of the frequencies above the cue pass, and it's cutting the frequencies below it. Low cut, high pass. It's called the same thing. And I'm just going to start listening to this. First thing I'm going to do is, just so I can dial this in easier, I'm going to move this sound closer to this one so I can hear them really as like one after the other. So whenever it's playing the green one, this is what I'm adjusting. And to just listen, I'm just going to start moving this filter up, and you'll just hear the bottom end of the organ disappear every time it comes back around. That's it. That's all I'm doing. It's a 24 dB per octave cut, and my crossover frequency is 866 hertz. And I just dialed the output back just to level match them a little bit. That's it. That's that entire effect. It's just a filter. Okay, moving on. So if I wanted to, I could copy and paste that, but I just wanted to show you how to do that. So I'm just going to leave the main organ in the mix. Haha, we are here, vocals. Let's see what we have.
Big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money, clothes, big names in my closet. Fendi belts and that Louis V, man, that Truly jeans stay fallin'. I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money, clothes, big names in my closet. Fendi belts and that Louis V, man, that Truly jeans stay fallin'.
So this vocal actually sounds pretty good. Doesn't need much work. Again, if you're a young mixer, don't over mix. Something sounds good, typically that's going to tell you you probably need to do less to it unless you're trying to do something really specific. So I'm just going to use a stock compressor, and I'm just going to give it a little bit of evening out with the compressor. I'm going to slow down the attack a little bit so that the initial transients of his voice pop through, but then I'm going to make the release really fast so it clamps down hard. And basically what this will do is it'll even out all of his words. It'll still give a little bit of percussiveness to his voice, but it's going to even out all of his words.
I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money, clothes, big names in my closet. Fendi belts and that Louis V, man, that Truly jeans stay fallin'. I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money, clothes.
Real simple. This really doesn't need much else. I think it needs some de-essing, so I'll put a de-esser on it. I don't think it needs any EQ. I like the sound of his voice already. It was recorded well, so I'm not going to change that.
I got money, hoes.
And I might be able to improve it if I was really trying to do a full mix, but the next vocal I know I'm going to have to do some work with. So this stock de-esser, I'm just going to do high frequency only. 7K is pretty good. So
I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money, clothes.
So a de-esser, if you don't know what a de-esser is, it reduces the S's, the T's, the F's, any of those sounds. So, and it doesn't, if you set it up the way I'm setting up, high frequency only, it doesn't affect any of the rest of the sound at all, just above whatever frequency that you're setting. So this, anything above 6K is the de-esser is looking for, and when it hears it, it's just going to knock those frequencies back and nothing else. And you'll see it working right here.
I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money.
Now, if you over de-ess somebody, it'll make them start sounding like they're going to lisp. So you got to be really careful to not over de-ess. And again, just use your ears, not your eyes.
I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money, clothes, big names in my closet.
It actually doesn't sound all that bad, but I wouldn't go that extreme anyway. Okay.
I got money.
I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this vocal. It sounds pretty good. I'm going to give it a touch of that nylon against reverb.
I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money, clothes, big names in my closet. Fendi belts and that Louis V, man, that Truly jeans stay fallin'. I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money, clothes, big names in my closet.
So again, this is a plate. It kind of carries the sound with it as it goes. A real plate is just a really thin piece of metal in a box. And it, you know, if you've ever heard sound like travel down a spring, that's what it does. I'm just using enough reverb to kind of put it in a space, but not make it sound like reverb on his voice. But I think I also want to try a delay.
I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money, clothes.
And you'll notice the other thing that the reverb does to it, if you're not a real seasoned mixer, when it's dry, it's kind of more upfront and right in your face. And sometimes that's great, especially if you're doing like real street hip hop. A lot of times you just want that vocal raw and nasty and street level and right at you. But most trap stuff, especially when everything else is so reverberant and kind of washy, then you want a little bit of that wash on the vocal typically too. Not always, but you know, it's everybody has their different tastes.
I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet.
But I do think one thing that might be cool on this is a real dark delay. And again, we go back to that idea of the cutting the high frequencies off of the delay return. I'm going to show you how effective this is with vocals sometimes. I'm going to cut a lot. This is going to go down to like 1.6K. And I'm not going to ping pong it. It's not going to go left and right. I just want a straight mono delay. And I want a quarter note at 143, which is still really fast. What is this on MS? 420 milliseconds. This is still pretty fast. So, and then I've got to dial up. Here's the, all right, bus 5 and 6. So, listen to what this does.
I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money, clothes, big names in my closet. Fendi belts and that Louis V, man, them Truey jeans stay fallin'.
Hear how it gives it a bit of depth without like the brightness and the presence of the delay getting in the way. Listen to that. The only thing I'm going to change is this low pass filter cutting the high frequencies, and just listen to the difference in perception of how this delay is when the delay is kind of this dark filtered thing and when it's really bright.
I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money, clothes, big names in my closet. Fendi belts and that Louis V, man, them Truey jeans stay fallin'. I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice.
See, that keeps the focus on the lead vocal, but it also gives you this like, you know, it's just that kind of bounce back effect that sometimes feels really good, especially if he's breaking up his words the way he is. This can be really effective.
I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money.
Now I've got it a little louder than it should be just so you can kind of hear it, but I'm also going to take off of this filter and then you can hear the difference in perception.
I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money, clothes, big names in my closet. Fendi belts and that Louis V, man, them Truey jeans stay fallin'.
And you'll also notice I took the feedback way down, so you're only getting just over one repeat on it.
I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we bop. I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got.
All right. He's already got effects on his ad-libs. So listen to what he's got going on.
Money, hoes, in my wallet.
So he's got some sort of chorusing going on plus delay taps on top of that. And he doesn't filter his delay taps. But that's okay because this is kind of like a background sound. So it's not going to be as loud as the lead. Sometimes you want the ad-libs as loud as the lead. But on these, I think I'd want them just slightly behind.
I got money, hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money, clothes, big names in my closet. Fendi belts and that Louis V, man, them Truey jeans stay fallin'. I got money.
Nice. So now I'm going to listen to the hook vocal.
Big bank, take left bank. Them sharks all in your fish tank. Big bank, take left bank.
It's the exact same, it sounds like the same voice on the same mic at the same level, so I'm just going to copy my settings over. Now, the one thing about copying the settings over, you see this is panned left and this is panned right. I think I probably want to pan this even further. That you want to pan your auxes too if you have delays, so that the delays are out left and right too instead of kind of in mono. So check it out.
Big bank, take left bank. Big bank, take left bank. Big bank, take left bank. Them sharks all in your fish tank. Big bank, take left bank. Big bank, take left bank. Big bank, take left bank. My money long and your bills ain't.
I think I got too much delay on this, but I think there might be delay already on the sound. I wish he hadn't given it to me like this, but it's life.
Big bank, take left bank. Big bank, take left bank. Big bank.
Yeah, see, so he's already got delay printed on this, and you hear how he didn't filter out any of the top end, and it kind of gets the mix a little cloudy. Like it's just now that repeat vocal that's at full frequency range is really fighting with the main one, and because he printed it as audio, there's really not a whole lot I can do to it, but I'm not going to add another delay on top of that. I'll just put reverb on it.
Big bank, take left bank. Big bank, take left bank. Big bank, take left bank. Them sharks all in your fish tank. Big bank, take left bank. Bank, take left bank. Big bank, take left bank. My money long and your bills ain't.
Okay, nothing special there. It's basically the same vocal, so I'm not going to spend time on it. This guy, Here's the messed up one. You need to hear this one.
Nasty fit, money dirty, I'm filthy rich. A1 with that gangster, y'all is counterfeit. Glocked up with extendo clip, top, and it empty quick. Say no more, my flow set on Rolex, y'all say go flow. My pockets make no sense, got cake on dough.
Man, this is like a bullhorn. It's this really, really narrow frequency range in his voice. And not only that, there's this frequency right in the mid-range that's like piercing. So the first thing I'm going to do is go after that really narrow, ringy frequency right in the mid-range. I'm going to use this Q4 because you can get a super, super tight notch with this. So I'll dial it up to about 70. And it's this one. So the first thing I'm going to do is search for it. Now, what I'm listening for is, let's listen to it just in solo. You can hear right in the middle of the mid-range, there's this frequency that's just, it doesn't go with his voice, it just rings. It sounds like an imperfection in the membrane of the diaphragm of the microphone.
Ride around with a bad bitch, other hoe, my partner, clean whip, nasty fit.
Almost sounds like a tone in there, so I'm going to search for that. When I find it, you'll know it. This might hurt your ears a little bit, so if you're listening in headphones or really loud on speakers, now is the time to turn them down.
Ride around with a bad bitch, other hoe, my partner, clean whip, nasty fit, money dirty, I'm filthy rich. A1 with that gangster, y'all is counterfeit. Glocked up with extendo clip, top, and it empty quick.
Wow, that is piercing. So, I searched with a really narrow notch and found that really super ringy frequency, and now I'm just going to take it out.
Ride around with a bad bitch, other hoe, my partner, clean whip, nasty fit, money dirty, I'm filthy rich. A1 with that gangster, y'all is counterfeit. Glocked up with extendo clip, top, and it empty quick.
So you see, it's still, the sound is, his voice is still super mid-rangey. It's really narrow, but at least that super ringy frequency that was clouding up all of the mid-range is gone. So now I just have a really mid-rangey voice, but it's much more controllable now that that one really annoying frequency is gone. But he needs some oomph in his voice. He needs some bass, or at least some lower mids. And I think I'm going to go with this Aphex Big Bottom again. I could try to EQ it, but I feel like it's going to be too hard to fatten him up with EQ. So I'm going to try Big Bottom. You know, a Pultec might be good for this, but it might be too low. He's so narrow. So, all right. So I'm going to null this out.
Ride around with a bad bitch, other hoe, my partner, clean whip, nasty fit, money dirty, I'm filthy rich. A1 with that gangster.
I like this, but it sounds a little bit too like muddy and tubby to me. So I'm going to try to find a different place in the tone.
Ride around with a bad bitch, other hoe, my partner, clean whip, nasty fit, money dirty, I'm filthy rich. A1 with that gangster, y'all is counterfeit. Glocked up with extendo clip, top, and it empty quick. Ride around with a bad bitch, other hoe, my partner, clean whip, nasty fit, money dirty, I'm filthy rich. A1 with that gangster, y'all is counterfeit. Glocked up with extendo clip, top, and it empty quick. Ride around with a bad bitch, other hoe, my partner.
It's like once you hear it with the low end, you can't even believe that it didn't have it. Listen to it again.
Ride around with a bad bitch, other hoe, my partner, clean whip, nasty fit, money dirty, I'm filthy rich. A1 with that gangster.
Now, a lot of cats I see using L1s on rap vocals can be pretty effective. You know, depending on what sound you want, just make sure you don't over compress the shit out of everything.
Ride around with a bad bitch, other hoe, my partner, clean whip, nasty fit, money dirty, I'm filthy rich. A1 with that gangster, y'all is counterfeit.
Make sure you slow down the release a little bit if you're going to use an L1 on vocals. Otherwise, you'll get that kind of distorted, like stretchy sound. I don't know, it's really nasty. Here, I'll show you the difference.
Ride around with a bad bitch, other hoe, my partner, clean whip, nasty fit, money dirty, I'm filthy rich. A1 with that gangster, y'all is counterfeit. Glocked up with extendo clip.
Hear how it was really nasty when the release was super fast, but when you slow it down a little bit, it smooths out the release and it just makes it sound more natural, but it still makes it everything at that same level.
Ride around with a bad bitch, other hoe, my partner. Clean whip, nasty fit, money dirty, I'm filthy rich. A1 with that gangster, y'all this counterfeit. Glocked up with extendo clip, top, in an empty quid. Ride around with a bad bitch, other hoe, my partner. Clean whip, nasty fit, money dirty, I'm filthy rich. A1 with that gangster, y'all this. With extendo clip, top, in an empty quid.
He could probably use a little bit of de-essing as well, but I already showed you on the other one, so this last one I want to get to this other vocal for you. I know this lesson's going long.
Wait, hold up, please let me pull up. I neck that high-tech, this lean got me toe up. So what? Roll it up, shoot them shrooms, smoke it up. Got my goons posted up, with them loaded guns and that coca brush. Saddlebags, band up, tighter. Hold up.
Okay, so now I have a dry ad-lib, and I'm going to do to the dry ad-libs what he's got going on the wet ad-libs. So if you can hear these dry ad-libs.
Look out! Look out! Fat? Okay. Look out! So fat, saddlebag. Okay.
So this is dry. I'm going to listen to these.
So fat, saddlebag.
So the first thing I'm going to do is get that kind of chorusing, spready thing he's got going on. I've already got a bunch of things preset on this. First way I got it was the Waves doubler.
Look out! Fat? Okay. Look out!
And that's like the stock, you know, the way the doubler comes up. Roland CE1 from UAD does something similar.
Look out! Fat?
A little more chorusy. You can dial back the intensity if you want.
Look out! Fat? Okay.
It was basically just a chorus. This thing from Eventide, Ultra Channel. The only thing, it's got all these different settings. The only thing I ever use this thing for, but it's really cool for this, is this micro pitch shift. And to me, it's better than that like little micro tap from Sound Toys. I don't really like that.
Look out! Fat? Okay.
And you can see the depth on this is 50-50, so half dry, half wet. The width, how wide it is, 100%, but the depth, this is the depth of the modulation, so I don't want it to modulate too much above or below it, or it'll start sounding, you'll hear.
Look out! Fat? Okay. Look out! Fat? Okay. Look.
And then just a stock air chorus.
Look out! Fat? Okay. Look out!
And then he's got that kind of delay tap left-right thing going on, which I think I already have set up here. So I've got a quarter note ping pong left-right at 143. And let's dial in a bit of this.
Look out! Fat? Okay. Man, ass so fat, I call her saddlebag. She keep me band up, tighter than the Taliban. Man, ass so fat, I call her saddlebag. She keep me band up, tighter than the Taliban. Man, ass so fat. Man, ass so fat, I call her saddlebag. She keep me band up, tighter than the Taliban. Man, ass so fat.
Nice. Sorry for all the cursing. All right. So the last thing I'm going to show you before I wrap this up is a couple like repeat things on phrases.
Hoes, big bank in my wallet, ice fall on my neck. My niggas, we ballin'. I got money, clothes. Take left bank, big bank. Ass so fat, I call her saddlebag. She keep me band up, tighter than the Taliban. Wait, hold up, I neck that high, falling like an avalanche. Ass so fat, I call it.
All right, so the ass so fat, I'm gonna get rid of the ass. I'm gonna try and make it say so fat. Let's see how successful I am.
Ass so fat, so fat, so.
So I want it, instead of ass so fat, I want it so fat. So I'm gonna put my grid to 16th notes, and I'm gonna lock to grid.
So fat, so fat, ass so. So.
And go to 32nd notes.
So fat.
So I'm going to copy the so, and I'm going to put it right here.
So fat. So fat.
Ah, that's what I need to do. Okay. So I need to get the whole word.
So fat.
Okay. So you see up here, I've got this selected. I'm on grid, but it's an exact one beat. So I want to try make it go so fat. So I'm going to copy this, and I'm going to paste it exactly one beat ahead. And let's see what we got.
Lance, so fat. Ice falling like an avalanche. So fat. I call her saddlebag. Ice falling like an avalanche. So fat. I call her.
So you see what I did? I stayed on grid so that the timing of it is perfect. And I just found the exact right place to cut. And I took that. Sometimes it's like you're taking the first word and you're getting rid of the second one. Sometimes you're taking the second one and getting rid of the first one. But the end goal is to get rid of the, the curse. So one more time, and then I'll show you a couple other things to do.
Avalanche. So fat.
Now if I undo that,
So fat. Ass so fat.
so the second thing that you can do to kind of make this a clean version
Ass. Ass.
is this thing called verify, or it's like a slowdown effect. So in Pro Tools, it's verify. Logic, it's actually right in the fade section. So this is, I'm going to set this to slow down, and I'm going to select probably this straight from the top of the sound.
Ass so. Air so fat.
So now you got rid of the curse, and it's like implied. You know what it's saying, but it doesn't actually say it, so you can get away with it on radio.
Air so fat. Air so fat.
This is undone,
Ass so fat.
and this is redone.
Air so fat. I call her saddlebag. She keep.
So that's two different ways to do clean versions. You know, the other thing you could do, let me undo that, is just get rid of the word completely.
Ass so fat. So fat.
I mean, if this is the first time you're hearing this on the radio, you don't even know that that word is gone until you go out and buy the record and hear it and go like, oh, there was a word there. Sometimes that doesn't always work. In this case, it works perfectly because what he's saying, still makes sense. So there's three different ways that you could, handle this one situation.
So fat, I call her saddlebag. She keep me band up tighter than the Taliban. Wait, hold up.
All right, so that's about, I wouldn't say this is a stellar mix yet. Let me just finish the mix bus for you guys so you can kind of see what I'm doing with it. One of my favorite mix bus finishers is, now, I'll just tell you, because of the way that this video, how I have to route the audio to the video, I need to work on the aux, not the master. Basically, everything goes over to here. If you can see, it goes to bus 11 and 12. Everything here is bus 11 and 12. So it's going to this aux, and then the aux feeds the computer and also the mix bus. So I need to do the compression here. If you saw my the end of my Jeremiah 50 cent tutorial, I put compression on the mix bus and you didn't hear it because it was after my video routing. So my apologies for that. Let me show you what I was doing. Man, my favorite mix bus finisher is Slate Digital FGX. It's a little buggy and it's got its quirks, but basically it's a complete idiot box. All you do is I get rid of that comp. I don't know. I don't like the comp at all. I take the dither off. It defaults to 16-bit, so I make sure and put it up to 24-bit. Give it a little bit of a brick wall. I mean, 0.05 is like nothing. Save. Literally, the only other thing I almost ever do with this thing is just, now it's going to get a little bit louder, but not much because I'm already pushing pretty loud on the mix bus. I'm just going to jack up the gain until my RMS is about -8, and that's it.
So fat, I call her saddlebag. She keep me band up, tighter than the Taliban. Wait, hold up, please. So fat, I call her saddlebag. She keep me band up, tighter than the Taliban. Wait, hold up, please let me pull her. I neck that high tech, this lean got me tower. So what? Roll it up, chew them shrooms.
It's not a crisis if you go into like -7s and -6s, but that's really starting to get over loud. You may hear some records mastered that loud, but chances are you're going to make things distort, whereas a mastering engineer is going to make things sound beautiful. You're not a mastering engineer, so, you know, -8s, especially, you know, the thing is when you have a lot of low-end content, that will drive the RMS of your mix a lot. And if you can see the peak and the RMS, the peak is 0. I've got a brick wall limiter, so it's just smashing against the brick wall limiter, but I'm pushing up the RMS, or the perceived loudness of the whole mix. And let me just, this is going to get loud, but let me demonstrate what that means, because the peak will not change. It can't go above 0. There's nothing above 0.
So fat, I call her saddlebag. She keep me band up, tighter than the Taliban. Wait. So fat, I call her saddlebag. She keep me band.
You hear how it's starting to distort? Don't do that, please. If you tell anybody that you learned anything from me, do not distort your mix.
So fat, I call her saddlebag. She keep me band up, tighter than the Taliban. Wait.
And the other thing that happens when you overcompress a mix is that your kicks don't hit as hard. They may last longer and you may hear them bigger, and especially if you're distorting your kicks, they may actually sound more powerful because that distortion is hitting your ear every single time. But I guarantee you the end listener is probably not going to want to hear it that way. So, you know, -8 RMS if you've got a lot of low-end content, -9 or 10 if you don't have a lot of low-end content. This is about where you want to be.
So fat, I call her saddlebag. She keep me band up, tighter than the Taliban. Wait, hold up, please let me pull her.
And that's it. You know, the other thing I'll show you is I use this BX Digital. It's like I did on that Vox ARP thing to widen it a little bit. And I'm just going to put this out to maybe 110 or 112.
So fat, I call her saddlebag. She keep me band up, tighter than the Taliban. Wait, hold up, please let me pull her. I neck that high tech, this lean got me tower. So what? Roll it up.
That's all I'm doing, just a little bit of widening, just to give it a little bit more bigness, because the wider you get it, you'll start losing low end, and it'll start making you kind of want to crane your head like a dog. It's not a good thing. Anyway, so really, that's it. This song is virtually mixed. Top to bottom, you got a ton of different effects that you can try at home. You know how to finish. And good luck with your mixing. This is Ken Lewis, Audio School Online. Check out Music School Online if you want to learn an instrument or music theory, or if you got kids. And until next time, thanks.